So it's August in France, and last week I needed a doctor, not an ambulance. Didn't want to go to the emergency room. I just needed to see a doctor. But the problem is my doctor, like most of France, is on vacation. Her colleague, who has seen us also, is on vacation. And we have a backup, but he has moved clear across town, and it would involve a lot of walking, and that was my actual problem. So he was no good. So this is France in 5 minutes. What to actually do when you need medical care and everyone you would normally call is gone for whatever reason. So I went through this last week. I wrote it all down, and I'm going to give you a list. It's a lot of phone numbers. Some of them I didn't know, and I've lived here for years now. So first, the real emergency stuff, fast. 15 is the emergency number throughout France. It works anywhere in France. 112 is the European emergency number. That works throughout the EU. It's functionally the same thing. If you can only remember one number, remember 112. And 114 works if you're deaf or hard of hearing, or you can't safely speak for some reason. If you're in danger, if you're discovered speaking, you can text to 114. Now, the part that I didn't know, I knew that 15 is what you called if you needed an ambulance, but they're not just an ambulance service. They are actually the front door to something called the SAS, the Service d'Accès aux Soins. Pardon my pronunciation. There's going to be more bad French from me in this video. You call 15 and you talk to a medical dispatcher, and they work out what you actually need. And if what you need is a doctor, a general practitioner, in the next day or two, they'll find you one. And the target is 24 to 48 hours, so it's not immediate that way. 99% of France is covered by this service. And I thought that 15 meant, sirens and ambulances only, but it doesn't. And that comes back around at the end of this video as well. So one note here, speaking of my bad French, is you need to learn some emergency French for my fellow foreigners here. Don't assume that you'll get an English speaker on 15. You might actually, and you might be able to get an English speaking doctor if needed, but there is no promise that you will. So write down 6 lines for yourself, memorize these before you ever need them, and then you'll be able to recall them quickly, if you're in a pressurized situation. So first you want to say, I'm sorry, I don't speak French very well. Je suis désolé, je ne parle pas très bien français. You want to ask if they speak English politely, so you would say, parlez-vous anglais? You say your name, so je m'appelle, your name. You also need to tell them where you are, of course, if you need an ambulance or someone to come to your house for a house call. So mon adresse est, your address. And your phone number, mon numéro de téléphone, and your number. And then lastly, j'ai besoin d'aide médicale. And I would suggest that you practice your address and your phone number out loud, because the French say numbers, especially phone numbers, in pairs. They don't say, for instance, 0612. They say 06 12 34, which is fine when you're calm, but that's probably not going to be something that you want to figure out if you are in crisis. So here's why I needed all of this help, the short version. So we had a big end of year thing at the daycare, a big party a couple of weeks ago, which I was involved in helping to set up. And then we had a big family day out the next day, going to a family picnic with a bunch of families. And that involved a bunch of walking up and down hills and carrying heavy things, a lot of physical work, and chasing a toddler around in the case of Jenny. So in about 24 hours, I did probably 5 to 10 times the normal amount of stress and time on my feet that I would. And sometime on Saturday, when we got back from the picnic and I had a chance to kind of rest, my left heel and specifically my Achilles tendon were totally swollen and throbbing, and walking got very, very difficult. And I didn't think it was an emergency room situation. Going to the ER for something like that is exactly what clogs up the ERs and I think abuses the healthcare system. It wasn't an emergency, but it did need a doctor. So that's how we went down this adventure that I'm telling you about. So the hunt began. My GP was away, which I knew, but I checked anyway, and her backup, as I said, was gone. And the old third alternative we had is clear across town, and walking was my problem, so I knew that he was really not a great choice. So one option you have is SOS Medicins. You want to write this number down, 3624. That is a doctor's association, and someone answers 24 hours a day all year. In Paris and most of the 92, 93, and 94 districts, they can actually send a doctor to your house. Yes, legitimate house calls. They also have centers and clinics, and they do teleconsultation nationwide. So even if you're not in Paris, you can call that number and they can do a teleconsultation for you. And I had asked for a home visit. You hear my daughter in the background. She's excited. I asked for a home visit. Nobody was available. And that's not a knock on them. You know, it's August, like I said, and demand is demand for everybody. But one other option you have is your pharmacy. There's one that's about 3 or 4 blocks from us right now. And in pharmacies in France, for a lot of minor things, they can look at it and tell you honestly if they think you need a doctor, or in the case of my ankle, they could have sold me like a proper support in the meantime. That's free. There's no appointment needed. It's a walk-in type of service. You wait in line at the pharmacy, and when it's your turn, they'll help you out. And since 2024, a trained pharmacist can actually test you for a lot of really basic things. They can do a strep throat test. They can test you for a UTI if you suspect you have one of those. And they can even give you antibiotics right there without needing a prescription. So that's a pretty convenient service. So what actually worked for me in the end was I stopped searching Doctolib for doctors I knew, and I started searching by area, soonest availability, and I filtered it for accepting new patients. I found a new clinic that is near us. They were open in August, and I got an appointment the next day. So that's the trick. On Doctolib, you want to search geography and availability, not just names of doctors who you know or you've seen on the side of a building but have never visited. So as far as the appointment itself, I went in prepared. I had typed up a full dossier that I wrote in English, I translated it into French, and it had my history, my medications. It led with all my vitals and why I was there in the first place. I printed it out. I charged my phone to 100% on purpose. I had my offline French dictionary downloaded on Google Translate, which I always do. I went in, and the doctor spoke no English, which isn't his fault. We're in France. The fault is on me for not speaking French very well. But my French quickly ran out after some very basics, and I reached for my phone, and I had a strong signal, but no data inside for reasons I don't know. Their building's basically a Faraday cage for data. So I checked my Google Translate itself, and the offline French I had downloaded was offline French for, ordering lunch, not discussing your Achilles tendon. So that didn't help. The doctor started getting pretty frustrated, and at a certain point, he was being kind of a jerk to me, so I started packing my stuff up, and he changed his tone a little bit. But then I remembered that what I thought he was asking me was written on that paper that I'd handed him, which he had glanced at when I handed it to him and then didn't really review. What he wanted to know was right there in the middle of the top page, right in front of him. So I remembered that, and I pointed to the page, and then we were able to proceed. So 4 things for you. First, print all your stuff up, all your information, hand it over, and make sure the most important stuff is really obvious and really bold on the front page if it's a stack like mine was. Don't assume anyone reads it. And do your best to figure out what they want if you have to, and kind of know where that is in your document. You want to pre-translate the words specific to your problem and really have those in your head, so that everything that might come up, you have an ear for it. In my case, it would be dolor au tendon d'Achilles, and I wanted him to write me a recommendation, a prescription for imaging, because I know something's wrong with it beyond just overuse. And so I should have asked him, est-ce qu'il fait une imagerie, s'il vous plaît? But you should screenshot these words as well to make sure that, in case your data doesn't work in your visit and your memory fails, you at least have it kind of written down a couple of places for you to be able to be able to get through the appointment. And say what you want out loud. I should have said, je voudrais une ordonnance pour une échographie, s'il vous plaît. Now, a funny sidebar is that Susie took her own mother to the same clinic that afternoon with all of her information prepared, three documents, Chinese, English, and French, because my mother-in-law only speaks Chinese. Susie's functional in French, but like me, she's not prepared for a detailed doctor's conversation. And the doctor that they got was a different doctor than I saw, and of course he spoke perfectly fluent French. He spoke perfectly fluent French, of course, but he spoke perfectly fluent English, and he was lovely to them. So I'm glad it worked out for them, and their visit was very smooth. And, to be clear, that's, in my case, that's the first bad doctor, and he might be a great doctor, but it is the first bad experience with a doctor that we have had here the entire time we lived here. Our own GP is absolutely excellent, love her to death, and she speaks like 5 languages, so she's more advanced than all of us. The PMI care that Geneva received is excellent. So, one bad appointment isn't a system failing. It's really a result of my lack of better French, and this guy, I think, he was kind of cranky from hello, so maybe he didn't want to be working in August. So the order of operations, this is what you should save. So first is you have your own GP, your own family doctor. Then go to Doctolib if you don't already have a backup doctor that you can check them next. But if you need to try to find someone, search by area availability and accepting new patients. That's the key. Then try the pharmacy, depending on what's wrong with you. They might be able to help. And then don't forget that you can call SOS Medicins 3624, and they can do teleconsultations with you nationwide, even if you're not in the Paris region. And if you're still stuck, call 15. It's not just for ambulances. They can refer you out. And here in the Val-de-Marne, which is the department that we live in, there is a network called SAMI, SAMI, and they have 12 locations, which are basically clinics that they support. But you do have to call 15 first, and they send you to the right one. They make an appointment for you. Other departments throughout France organize it differently, and they have different names, but the same concept applies. So wherever you live, search and see what's local for you, or just call 15. And additionally, don't forget that you can call 112 anywhere in the EU, or you can text 114 if text is what you need to do for your situation. So you don't want to forget to bring, if you're in the French healthcare system, bring your carte vitale, bring your mutuelle, which is your top-up insurance card, and your ID and a way to pay, of course, and any list of medications that you take. And I would suggest that you have what you need printed out and translated into French as well. If they can take your carte vitale, then all the paperwork is automatic. But if they can't, you ask for the official receipt that you want to use for reimbursement within the French system as a feuille de soins, pardon my pronunciation. But you send that to your CPAM, which is the government healthcare administrative office that you interface with. If you're a visitor on traveler insurance, you can ignore most of that. Get your proof of consultation and a payment, method. Get your receipts basically, and you submit that with whoever you have your travel insurance with. So in the end, did all this work? More or less. I mean, he looked at my ankle for all of about 8 seconds. He kind of manipulated my ankle and my foot. He pronounced that nothing was broken, said it was just overuse, and said I'd improve. And, he wasn't wrong. I'm about 90% better today. I was about 80% better when I went in to see him a week and a half after the injury occurred. But that's because of 10 days of rest and ice and a anti-inflammatory gel that I got from my pharmacist friend, not from that doctor's help. And so I still don't really know what's going on in this ankle. I want imaging for it, and I'll probably need to see a specialist after that to interpret the results. So when my own doctor is back in September, I'm basically going to start this process over with someone who I like and respect and who I can speak English with, thankfully. So the bottom line is that I did find a doctor in France in August. I did not get my ankle fixed. So those are two very different outcomes, but that's how it worked out for me. If you have a trick that I missed or a recommendation about healthcare in France, please put it in the comments. But for now, that's France in 5 minutes.